We got some breaking news coming out here. The Las Vegas Raiders are officially trading cornerback Jakorian Bennett, and we're going to talk about why the Raiders are making this trade and what are they kind of getting in return for trading Jakorian Bennett. So Adam Schefter reported that the Raiders are sending cornerback Jakorian Bennett to the Eagles in exchange for defensive tackle Thomas Booker the fourth. It's kind of shocking, but truth be told, I'm not really shocked that the Raiders are moving off of Jakorian Bennett. Let's just be honest, the Raiders at the cornerback position, they've switched schemes. Although the defensive coordinator is the same exact defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham over the last 2 years has utilized Jakorian Bennett. The new regime, Pete Carroll specifically, is running his own type of defense. And when he's running his own style of defense, he has his own type of cornerbacks. You look at Darian Porter, 6'3". You look at Eric Stokes, 6'2.5". Isaiah Palamau, 6'3.5". Jeremy Chin, 6'3". The Raiders have went out there and said, we want guys that are tall, long, lengthy, and will hit you. And Jakorian Bennett, unfortunately, does not fit that mold of corners. That, too, the Raiders have kind of switched to a defense where they're going to utilize a lot of big nickel. So you really only need two cornerbacks starting in this defense. And, of course, the type are the long, lengthy guys, right? Eric Stokes, Darian Porter, to Cameron Richardson. So with that, I'm not shocked at all that Jakorian Bennett is going to be shipped. Truth be told, knowing Pete Carroll and kind of how he runs his defense, I'm not shocked that Jakorian Bennett is being traded. Plus, we've already heard, this guy's been working with a third-team unit. He really hasn't looked all that good, and I think it just makes sense because this is a guy that has high upside and high potential. And I think for the Eagles, again, who have kind of revamped their defense a little bit, really good defensive coordinator, Jakorian Bennett actually has a chance to go over there and start, and kind of continue to, develop over the course of his career and actually be a good football player as he just kind of continues to develop. And then for the Raiders, of course, you're not just giving Jakorian Bennett away. You're actually getting a defensive tackle. And I think for the Raiders, they recognize that we need a defensive tackle. We got to get better at that position. And I think Thomas Booker is actually a pretty solid football player. Truth be told, I watched this guy's tape for like 7-8 minutes. He played like 180 snaps this past season. Keep in mind, he did graduate from Stanford back in, I believe, 2022. He played 1 year in the NFL, or at least he had one opportunity in the NFL. Didn't make a team that first year, his rookie year. Went to the UFL for about 2-3 years. And he just came back to the NFL, right? So he just got back. Eagles obviously picked him up. He played 180 snaps last season for the Eagles. The guy was pretty solid, right? Like, he wasn't a full-time starter or a full-time contributor. But the one thing with Howie Roseman is he gets guys that just have, one or two things that they do really, really well. And sometimes those type of things can develop, right? And with Thomas Booker, you can see he has quickness, he has speed, he's a pretty good run defender, and he has some upside as a pass rusher as well. So I think for the Raiders, you're adding a defensive tackle where your defensive tackle room is on the weaker side, right? Especially given you release Christian Wilkins. Thomas Booker, although he might not be our best defensive tackle, if he develops right, could actually be a contributor for the Raiders at some point this season. I think for the Raiders, this just kind of made sense. You're moving off a player that probably would not have made the roster. And even if he made the roster, how much were you going to utilize him given he doesn't really fit the scheme? You're kind of allowing Jakorian to reset and have that chance to have success in the NFL as opposed to just making him a special teams only type of player. And then on the other side of it, you get that defensive tackle in return. I think this is a win-win for the Raiders, however you kind of look at it. But it is interesting nonetheless because although Jakorian's always kind of had upside, he has good hip fluidity. He's shown us over the course of his career that he has potential, he has upside. It's interesting that the Raiders kind of went with guys like Cameron Richardson. They're rolling with the rookie Darian Porter, and they're comfortable with those guys. Given that those guys haven't proven themselves in the NFL, but they're still comfortable enough with those guys as opposed to saying, Jakorian's played 2 years in the NFL. He's played, 1,500 snaps in the NFL. Instead, they're going to go with the younger guys. And I think that just kind of speaks to what those guys have already kind of shown us. Earlier today, I actually talked about it. Greedy Vance has looked really, really, really good from the reports of what I'm hearing. The guy had 5 college interceptions, right? And then in training camp, he's had a couple of interceptions as well for the Raiders. And again, I think it's just one of those things where guys like Greedy Vance are flashing. Darian Porter, some people think he might be the next really good corner in the NFL. The Raiders have some good players in the secondary. So again, I think this just all made sense for the Raiders to package Jakorian, give him that opportunity with the Eagles. And of course, you get that defensive tackle back with the Raiders. And this also just kind of shores it up. I think we could have probably already agreed to it before the trade happened that Jakorian was not going to start. And we probably knew who the 3 or 4 guys were. But this kind of just confirms it, right? So the Raiders will most likely have Eric Stokes starting on one side. And then on the other side, it'll be some combination of Cameron Richardson, JT Woods, who's kind of been a wild card. And of course, Darian Porter, the 3rd round pick. One of those 3 guys will end up starting opposite of Eric Stokes. So those will probably be, your 2 starting corners. And even the 3 guys that are competing, cornerbacks, it's a pretty fluid position where any given week you can probably, swap a guy out, right? If a guy struggles, you just swap him out real quick. So we'll probably see all 4 of those guys play this season. And even Greedy Vance, you never know what could end up happening. He could easily be the 5th cornerback for the Raiders on this roster. That doesn't include guys like Darnay Holmes, doesn't include guys like Sam Webb and some of the other guys we kind of have as well. Again, I think for the Raiders, this just makes a ton of sense. And I'm excited to watch Thomas Booker and just, see how soon the Raiders can get this guy caught up. The Raiders obviously have their first game coming up against the Seattle Seahawks this Thursday. I don't know if he'll play for the Raiders on Thursday, but I do want to watch him and kind of watch his tape and see what he has. We have a couple of young rookies as well at the defensive tackle position. But truth be told, releasing Christian Wilkins has really put our defensive tackle room, in my opinion, in a bad spot, right? Of course, we have Adam Butler, and I think Butler's a good football player. But we don't really have a true, complete defensive tackle that can play on rundowns, that can play as a pass rusher on passing situations. We don't have a true 3-down defensive tackle. Adam Butler is the closest guy that we have, and even Butler in the past has struggled as a run defender, although I do think he obviously got a lot better as a run defender. The Raiders don't have a great defensive tackle outside of Adam Butler that could be relied upon as a 3-down player. We have guys that can defend the run, right? And I think there's guys like Zachary Carter who can defend the run a little bit. You bring in some of these other guys, Fodu's another guy, Jonah Laulu. A lot of people think Laulu is a guy that could actually have taken that next step, kind of coming into this season. And a lot of people think he might end up breaking out for the Raiders. We'll see when that actually happens. I've already stated this in the past. I was not impressed at all by Laulu's tape from last season. I wasn't impressed by any of the guys, minus Adam Butler, right? So not having Christian Wilkins obviously does make a huge difference for the Raiders. But hopefully Thomas Booker can provide, a little bit of upside. And I'll just be honest with you guys, man. I think Adam Butler is obviously our best defensive tackle on the roster. Right after him, Thomas Booker is probably better than every other guy that we have, at least from a tape perspective from last season, right? Thomas Booker, to me, showed way more upside than like Carter or Laulu or Fotu. He showed more upside than those guys. And even the rookies that we have, Tonka Hemingway, I think has that upside and potential as well. But, Thomas Booker could easily be our number 2 D tackle this season, right? And again, we don't really know the development part of it, right? Because guys do get better going from one year to the next. They work out, they exercise, they get stronger, they get physical, they learn, they develop. But from last year's tape, right, Thomas Booker's tape was a lot better, in my opinion, than any of the other guys that we have. So we'll see if Thomas Booker can actually be a contributor for the Raiders. Either way, I think this move made sense. I'm actually excited for Jakorian Bennett to get to the Eagles, get to work with Vic Fangio. I'm obviously still going to be a fan of Bennett, but I'm also excited for the Raiders to go ahead and just kind of move forward with Thomas Booker, and then even the cornerback room that we kind of have. Although us fans, we're kind of hesitant with what this secondary group kind of looks like, but the coaching staff does not feel the same way, right? John Spytek does not feel the same way. Pete Carroll does not feel the same way. Patrick Ramright, like these guys don't look at our secondary group and think, hey, that's a weak point. Just because for us it's kind of unknown, right? Like we don't know what Cameron Richardson is this season. We don't know what Darian Porter is this season. Just because we don't know doesn't mean the coaching staff doesn't know. And the coaching staff has been very, very high on the secondary unit. Plus the defensive style that the Raiders are going to run this season it's going to be different. They're going to have Jamal Adams playing linebacker. They're going to have Jeremy Chin playing strong safety in the box, kind of like a weak side linebacker, right? They're going to have Isaiah Polamau on the other side also playing in the slot. So they're going to have all these guys that are like fast and quick, playing around the line of scrimmage. They're going to stack the box essentially, right? They're going to put 8 guys in the box, but the 8 guys are going to be made up of guys that are like 215, 220 pounds. They're not true linebackers. They're safeties that you're essentially putting down in the box. And you have the numbers, but you're going to be fast because of the fact that they're safeties playing linebacker essentially, right? So our defense is going to look different this year, and it's just going to be unique. And I'm excited to see if it actually works or if it doesn't work. We've seen it work for Pete Carroll in the past. Dan Quinn had a lot of success with this for the Cowboys. And then even, the Commanders had success with it last season, right? As Dan Quinn kind of got there as well. Robert Saleh doesn't really run the same type of defense, although he kind of comes from that same tree. Saleh runs a defense a little bit different. But, again, I think for the Raiders, this is going to be a really, really, really good thing. And we'll just see how it kind of works out. Let me know what you guys think, man. What are your guys' thoughts on the Raiders trading Jakorian Bennett? Do you guys think we might end up going out there and potentially getting another corner? Or are you guys good with how the group kind of looks right now? Let me know what you guys think. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.